Hi, this is Jason Palmisano, founder and CEO of Trinity Fitness. I'm here with my sister visiting. She actually lives in Omaha, Nebraska. If you heard me say she lives in Lincoln in some other video, just disregard that. She's actually living in Omaha. And I had a treat to tag along with her today to what she does as a profession. And that, well, I'm going to let you explain that.
Yeah, okay. I'm a hospice volunteer coordinator for a local hospice and home health care agency here in Omaha. But I'm also a hospice volunteer. And so Jay joined me this morning on a visit to a hospice patient who happened to be a Korean War vet, World War II vet. He played for Nebraska Cornhuskers in the 40s. Wonderful gentleman, storyteller, and I just really thought that Jay would enjoy getting to meet this gentleman. His name is Roy, and we just had a nice visit. And Jay got to see what a hospice volunteer does. And so basically, it's companionship. And so when people think about hospice, lots of times an image comes to mind, right? What was the image you had?
Well, I was thinking hospital beds, unconscious. There's not going to be any room for conversation or anything meaningful to take place. And we might pop in, pop out, and that was it. And it was so different from that. And the word that you heard Lisa use was companionship. And so Roy's in his 80s. And he has cancer running rampant through his body, yet he's walking around, eating, conversating. And here's someone in their 80s who has so much life still in the stories and the memories and the wisdom to share that I just thought you did a great job. And that's why I wanted to do this video, because you did a great job of adding value to Roy's life. By the time we left, and we probably spent 40 minutes with Roy, I want to talk about some of the things that you did, some of the questions that you asked, and then Roy's response at the end. I had an opportunity to pray with Roy. He's in tears because his life was so touched just that two people would spend the time and ask questions and listen. One of the questions you asked him, Roy, what are some of your favorite plays? Thinking back of when you were playing as a football player for the University of Nebraska, what advice would you give coaches today? Tell us some war stories. What are some of your favorite memories? What's the greatest life lesson you've ever learned? Things like these. And it was so enriching for me as well that, as a matter of fact, I would even say at this point, if you have time, no matter where you are on this planet, and you can, if you have some time, an hour a month even, to go be a hospice volunteer, there's so much value that you can add, but I can promise you, you're going to be incredibly enriched as well. So let me do this. The question on the table, literally, is what makes a great hospice volunteer?
Well, that's a great question, because I talk to a lot of people about the opportunity to spend some time volunteering for hospice. And they think, oh, I don't have time for that, or I have to be a certain way, or my heart's not there. I don't know. You know what? It's really just, think about your neighbor. Do you have time to visit with your neighbor? It's a conversation with an individual at the very, very least. And lots of times people think, okay, well, I could have some time for that, but what do I say? This person is receiving hospice care, and I don't understand what's going on in their body, and is it scary and creepy, and all these things that might go through your head are very natural, and that's okay to think that, feel that, but it's not as hard as you think. And I tell you what, I've been a hospice volunteer now for really just over a year. And I was trained, and so when you decide to try hospice volunteering, you'll be trained. And during the training, that's really a great time for you to discern, do I have what it takes to bring myself, my genuine self, to somebody's bedside and visit with them? Because that's all you're doing. You're bringing you, and you're bringing who you are, your stories, your love, to this person, and just visiting with them. So if you think that's something you can do, you're already there. The hard work is over, right? You've got that built in. And it also, if you're compassionate, if you have an idea of what empathy is and feeling for others, and who doesn't really on some level, you're there. You can serve as a hospice volunteer. And lots of times, I'm always ready to go with anything. I have a bag. It's actually a book bag that I have short stories in. I've got Aesop's Fables in there. I've got a book on baseball legends. I've got a book on virtues, short stories of all kinds. And I've got sketch paper in there, pens, pencils. I've got crayons, tape, anything. I'm ready to go. And because if I'm talking to somebody and there's a trigger and we're like, let's draw a picture of what you just explained to me, or you used to fish when you were younger. Let's draw a picture of the fish you caught. I mean, that's engaging. It's fun, and we get to do that. So whatever you want in your hospice bag, that's up to you. And those are tools that you have at the ready to pull out when you need to, or if you want to. And I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I was visiting with one of my patients, and I knew she liked to bake. And didn't have any flour or shortening in my bag, but I told her I'm going to come back in 2 days, and we are going to make pastry dough, and we'll make apple hand pies. And so 2 days later, I brought the flour and the shortening and everything we needed to make that pastry dough. And we sat together and we made pastry. And we talked about pies and good pastry and is butter better than shortening? And we went back and forth on that. And what's the flakiness and flavor and all. And we had a conversation, and it was an absolute joy. And so honestly, that's an example of hospice companionship that you partake in as a volunteer. So if you're thinking hospice is sitting at somebody's bedside, it might be that. It depends on where the patient is on their hospice journey, right? They could be ambulatory, meaning I'm up walking around, I'm talking fine, or they could be really near the end stages of life and in the bed. But as a hospice volunteer, you're able to respond to both situations and then situations in between. And it's really just a very fulfilling and enjoyable way to spend your time.
Yeah, right on. And so we'll close this out just with your bag of tricks, I'll call them, is your book bag filled with things that really build a bridge. So the conversation that you're having, you're asking questions and finding out what's trigger points and trigger memories in their life. You mentioned fishing, you mentioned pie baking, you mentioned Roy's athleticism. He was in the war. So you fill your bag with these things, and you shared a story of one gentleman who is just laying on his side, really can't move himself at this point, but is staring at the wall, and it was just a blank wall. And so you went in, pulled out your paper, crayons, you're talking to him, you're drawing colorful images, letting him know that he is loved, saying, I love you, on the sheet of paper, and pinning it to the wall right where he is looking. And that's just adding value. There's so many things and so many stories that you shared with me like that. So anyway, to wrap it up, what makes a great hospice volunteer? Being able to empathize with that person, asking them the questions, finding those trigger points, and then bringing some value to them, whether it's conversation, talking about memories and stories, being able to read to them or bake pies or so on and so forth like that. So worth it. So needed all over our planet today. Thank you for leading the charge on that.